how two people responded to the same challenge. One overcame, the other didn't. And it's interesting that when I was looking at scripture in Genesis, that Joseph did a lot of weeping. Not just once, but many times. And weeping is a sign that something is not right on the inside. Jesus wept. That's the shortest statement in the Bible. Jesus wept for a different reason when he looked at people who were lost, defenseless, without hope. He wept. There was that deep sense of compassion that only God can give us when we look at a world that is hurting outside, beyond the doors of this church. Somebody said this: the church of the future exists outside because out there are people who still don't know we exist. Forgiveness is not always easy. And at times it is more painful than the wound we suffered. To forgive the one that inflicted it upon us. And yet there is no peace without forgiveness. Some people suppress the pain and deny pain exists. Versus forgiving. How to tell the difference between true forgiveness and false. And number 3, forgiveness doesn't diminish justice. And that is true. It just entrusts it to God. Wow. In the book of Genesis chapter 4, 1 to 13, and Adam knew his wife, she conceived, bore Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord, and she bore another son, Abel. And in the process of time, verse 3, Cain brought the fruit of the ground as an offering to the Lord, and Abel he brought of the firstling of his flock, and of the fat thereof. And God had respect unto Abel and his offering, but unto Cain and his offering he had no respect. And Cain was angry, and his countenance fell. You see, Cain got offended. And it would seem on the outside that the two of them brought offerings on the basis of the work they did, and is God unfair in this whole thing? But God looked at the motivation of the heart, and the two brothers had two different motivations. And he said unto Cain, why are you angry? Why are you upset? If you did well, would you not be accepted? And then Cain slew his brother, and verse 13 says, and Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear, because thou hast driven me off this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth, and it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me. And the Lord said, no, nobody's going to slay you, but the pain you're going to carry because of your offense is going to be greater than your ability to bear. And it's hard to unravel this package in human sense, because you think he's entitled. Something went wrong. And people get offended. And I've discovered that often when a person has a high offense level, it is almost always because of some rejection they have experienced in early life. And their anger and offense is a response to some neglect that had taken place in the childhood years and upbringing years. And when you look at people who are hopefully more emotionally whole, and they are in a very small minority, their ability to navigate their emotions is far better. And you have a lot of sympathy for people like that because they don't intend to get offended. But there's something that triggers on the inside, and even they are not aware why they react the way they do. So it's almost always a reaction. And then you look at Joseph, and how did Joseph refuse to allow offense to dominate his life? He had every right to be offended on 3 counts at least. But I discovered one secret that hopefully I can pass on to you. That if you choose to live in the higher calling that God has for your life, then you can navigate offense successfully and enter into the destiny and purpose God has for you. And if there is one thing that can rob us of our destiny, it's offense. And we can live short of the purpose and plan of God because offense can become a distraction. Relational disappointments are part of the process leading to destiny, and you can't avoid it. And Joseph's secret was, even though it was painful, he refused to bypass the process because he realized disappointments can become a diversion. And many people who have allowed offense and unforgiveness to find a root in their lives end up living a life less than God intended. And so we look at Joseph's life and try to, whom did he have to forgive? Number one, he had to forgive his brothers. Can you put on the OSP Genesis chapter 50, verse 16 and downwards? And they sent a messenger unto Joseph, saying, your father commanded you before he died, saying, so shall you now say to Joseph, forgive, I pray thee, the trespass of thy brothers and their sin, for they did evil unto you. But I say, forgive them. Wow. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Wow. And that's not the first time Joseph wept. Look at it. And his brethren also went down before his face, and they said, we are your servants. And Joseph said unto them, fear not, for am I in the place of God? Joseph had reached a place of maturity emotionally, where he began to see the big picture. When he was going through the struggles, he may not have fully understood. And it's very interesting that there is no record in Genesis that God spoke directly to Joseph. No record. But as for you, you thought evil against me, but God turned it for good. Now therefore, verse 21, fear not, I will nourish you. Oh boy, what maturity. And your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly unto them. Forgiveness isn't easy, especially when somebody close to you betrays you. It's not easy. Nobody ever said it would be. Jesus knew that of the 12, one would betray him. And he had to walk with that knowledge, knowing which one. He says, one of you. I don't know whether he knew at that point because he was God and man at the same time. Which one? Which one? I'm walking with 12, I'm pouring my life into 12, but one is not going to show up. That's an emotional challenge in itself. And yet, on the cross, he modeled forgiveness. Peter struggled with this whole issue of forgiveness because Peter was a personality type A. He was choleric melancholy, whatever that means. And people who are wired that way find it harder to forgive because they're wired that way. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. 70 times 7. When people continue to repeat the same mistake, it's not easy. It's easy to preach the message, it's hard to live it out. But I can honestly say, I've gone beyond that struggle. Because I realize that if there is one thing that can frustrate the purpose of God for my life, it's not the devil. It's something within me called unforgiveness. Joseph had to forgive people who least deserved his forgiveness. And this is the Old Testament. This is the Old Covenant. There is no grace here. And yet, he says, God can take your pain and turn it around so that your pain can become a source of blessing to others who are going through pain. That's what the church is about. The church is not for good people to meet on Sunday morning and just have a happy clappy time and bless each other and go home. That is not the church Jesus came to build. He came to build a church where people can be honest and transparent about their struggle and find hope and acceptance in hopeless situations. That's the church he came to build. That no matter how painful your life has been, if you are willing to surrender that pain to God, He can turn it around. And He has, over and over and over again. Joseph had a dream in Genesis 37. He shared it with his brothers. And you know, when you look at the way he shared it, he had a part to play in that whole thing. And sometimes when there is conflict, we also have played our part because of our humanity. That's why when people come to me with some conflict issue, I say, look, I like to hear the other side of the story also. Because very often we can make a judgment here in one person's part, we like to hear the other part. Joseph shared his vision in a way that caused his brothers to get upset with him. Because 5 times there in those verses, he uses the personal pronoun I or me. Get mature. Joseph's dreams caused his brothers to envy him. They put him in a pit and sold him into slavery. Relational conflict becomes challenging and painful when people closest to us don't come through for us the way we expect them to. So we see this pattern of destruction wanting to visit every family and every generation if we allow it to. And it's very interesting. A cycle of destruction, relational destruction, repeats itself from generation to generation. Because somewhere down the line, somebody has decided not to break the cycle. Behind every family conflict, there is an undermining demonic force whose sole purpose and intent is to divide families. That's the underlying. Paul says we fight not with flesh and blood, but powers and principalities, spiritual wickedness in high places. Satan is called the prince of the power of the air. So whenever we experience conflict relationally, we have to examine and ask ourselves, what's the underlying influencing this thing? Is it because I want to have my way? I don't want to let them have their way. Why can't we together let God have His way? It's easier said than done. So in Genesis 37, they put him in a pit. But there's no water in the pit. You know, he's a 15-year-old guy and he's taken by his elder brothers and he put in a pit there. He's all alone. And he's done nothing wrong. He has every right to get offended. But there's no indication he did. And then I just want to throw this in. He thought maybe brothers, okay, brothers do that. You know, some older brothers do nasty things to younger brothers. I remember so long ago, two older brothers caught a younger brother, tied him up and put him in a room and closed the door, and the poor younger was screaming his life out. And then mom asked, "What? Why is he shouting?" "No, Mom, it's all right, nothing." And I just tried to get into the shoes of Joseph. He said, "Okay, maybe my brother's all right, but my dad's going to come for me." Because remember, he's the son of Jacob's old age. This morning, I saw a couple in the church who are not young, who turned up with a little baby, and I thought God has worked a miracle. Couldn't miss that. You don't find it funny, but that's all right. I got their permission. It's like Abraham. Maybe that's going to show up. Because the coat of many colors was symbolic not just of the favor of God upon his life, but an indication that his father preferred him to the others. And in some sense, because Jacob was a dysfunctional father, he was responsible partly for that scenario. So maybe that's going to show up. But that doesn't. And it's interesting that from that point onwards, Joseph had to navigate his life without his father's presence. That's not easy for a young man of 15. Wow. As fathers, we have an awesome responsibility given to us by God to help our children navigate into their destiny and purpose with a measure of grace that is not always humanly possible. 2 days ago, I had to SMS my son on a Thursday because he was going for some class, and I said, "I just want you to know that I'm really proud of your decision to go in the direction you are going, and I want to tell you I'm with you all the way." And he sent me an SMS back, 22 years too late, but better late than never. You don't know what that means to me. You see, fathers are not bad fathers. That's not what I'm saying. We just don't know how to be good ones. That's the problem. And all the ladies said, they're not bad fathers, trust me. They're not. But a father, and a father alone, is the one who can give a son or a daughter the affirmation they need to walk into their destiny. But if we haven't had it done to us, we don't know how to do it to our kids. But we have to break that cycle. Better late than never. And we have to be honest and transparent with our children and say, hey, I didn't know how to do it. I'm doing it the best way I can. But with God's grace, I will try to help you. Jacob walked with a limp. We are all limping. We are all broken. Men are more broken than women are. And sometimes we try to parent out of our own brokenness and in the process hurt our children unintentionally. And the enemy fractures the family. But at some point in time we have to speak words of healing and wholeness that can heal the wounded spirit. Proverbs says the wounded spirit who can bear. And so a mother has to fill in the role not just of being mother, but being father also. A role that God never intended. Because, you know, when Joseph becomes successful, in Genesis 45, hasty, verse 9, Genesis 45, 9, hasty, and go to my father and say to him, thus said thy son Joseph, God has made me Lord over all of Egypt, come down and stay with me. And thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near to me. He said, Dad, I've missed you for 15 years. I cannot handle it anymore. A father who was never there when he should have been. That's the tragedy of many young men who are on drugs and addictions and who are enslaved mentally because they had the father there for them. That's true. 80% of men in state penitentiaries in the US statistically have had a problem with the father. Wow. And I believe the root is Satan's desire to destruct a man because that will affect all his other relationships. A man's relationship with a father affects all other relationships, especially the marriage relationship and how he relates to his children. And the cycle of destruction will continue unless we choose consciously to break the cycle. You can be very spiritual and still be dysfunctional. There are quite a few guys in the Bible who are like that. David is a model of one of the most dysfunctional fathers in human history. And yet he's called a man after God's own heart. So the two are separated. And I don't know whom I'm speaking to this morning, but if you're a wife and you're sitting here and you're going through some struggle with your man and you know, his six-pack, all that is good, but you can't live with the six-pack alone for the rest of your life, just try to understand what happened in his life. Take the time to understand. The more you understand him, the better you can handle his response to the struggles you face. We often don't do that. We ask God, what about me? Just try to understand him, where he's come from, his childhood, what happened, what went wrong, why is he angry? 85-90% of men are angry. Anger is a major problem because something has gone wrong between father and son. And the anger continues. But we have to break the cycle intentionally, in humility, in transparency. And the greatest service we can do our kids is to say, I was wrong. I was wrong. But I'm trying to do it right. Because that heals the emotions. So Joseph had to navigate his challenges and struggles without a father. Life's not fair. I had to navigate my struggles without a father. But now when I look from a bigger, broader perspective, I begin to realize it was God who fathered me. Because the Bible says he's a father to the fatherless and he's a husband to the widow. It's put there in black and white for eternity. That you and I don't need to walk in hurt for the rest of our lives if we can honestly and transparently bring those emotions to Him. It doesn't make us less spiritual. It's not a sign of weakness to cry. But to say, through it all, God has been with me. That's what Joseph says. He said, through it all, but you planned evil for me. God can turn around. And I'm going to tell you something else. Your greatest ministry comes out of your greatest pain and disappointment. I love that. All over the world, men are looking for fathers. We have preachers, we have evangelists, we have prophets, we have apostles. We don't have fathers. In Sri Lanka, there's only one father, and God is, he's 87 years old. I think the only reason God is keeping him alive still is he wants to go, is because there are no other fathers to take his place. Where are the fathers? That's the question we ask. So Joseph decided, I'm not going to let this pattern of destruction repeat itself in my life. I want to break the cycle. As a matter of choice. It's painful. Number two, Joseph had the opportunity to take offense at Potiphar's wife. Now you know he was a good-looking guy and he had his six-pack and Potiphar's wife was rather bold. Because Potiphar was away most of the time doing business and she was supposed to be one of the fourth or fifth most attractive women in that culture at the time. And he was wrongly accused of doing something he didn't do. And that's painful. You see, when you are accused of doing something you didn't know, the desire for revenge is strong. Because you didn't do it. You've been faithful to God, you've been faithful to yourself, you've been faithful to the context you were in. The desire for revenge can creep into your life. I will get even. Just waiting for an opportunity to get even. Let it go. Somewhere or some point in time, we have all been sinned against in some way or another. But Joseph refuses to allow bitterness and offense to take hold of his life. Genesis 41, 51 and 52 is a reflection of his pain. He names his children Manasseh, for God has made me forget my toil at my father's house. And the name of the second he calls Ephraim, for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Wow. He's standing before Pharaoh, but he's saying it's not without a personal price. That's awesome. Don't believe all these books you read and people write and quick sells and some of the stuff we hear on TV and that God can give you a quick fix and take you into a place of power and influence without a price. It's not scripture. It's a nice story. It's a cute little story. But it's contradiction of the cross. Wherever people got to the top of their destiny, it will have a price. But But their ability to walk past the pain, past the struggle, past the disappointment made them who they were. Because God can take our pain and shape us to become the people He wants us to be. The potter and the wheel. We don't like the reshaping process, but it's part and parcel of God's bigger plan for our lives. And just when you think you are complete, He starts all over again. You know, the whole potter and you got to go down to a pottery shed and look at it. And the potter, he puts the clay and he starts making it, shaping it. No, you don't get to choose. The clay doesn't get to choose the pattern. God does the choosing. And the man is working on the clay. And then he stands back and he looks at it. And if he's not happy with it, he lumps it all again and starts all over. Wow. And then when you think he's finished, he takes the completed product and he puts it there, stored away, till it matures. I don't know where we ever got this theory that God is going to do in 3 minutes what He took 15 years with Joseph and 33 years with Jesus. Reading a book won't get you into destiny. I wish it does. Then I'll buy all the books. It's a process. And God is in no hurry to promote us until we are ready. And we are mature enough to handle the promotion. That's just by the way. So an opportunity. He's been sinned against. But He chose us to stay focused on God. And we don't know how this thing with God worked between Him and God because it's not said there. But somehow it says in the Bible that the favor of God was upon Joseph and God was with Joseph. I don't know how he felt it, he experienced it, he sensed it. Nothing he said. God is silent, and if He's silent, we've got to keep Him silent. We can't understand why we go through what we go through. But somehow, if you and I are walking with God, we know He's part of the process. And so we stay committed to Him. That's not easy. Not easy for me. I know He's in the process. And I hold on to His word and trust that in His time it will come to pass. Then the third guy He had to forgive was the butler. Genesis 40. You know the story, for those of you who read the book of Genesis. 2 people had a dream, the butler and the baker, and then one was restored. Genesis 40, 21, 22, 23. And he restored the chief butler unto his butlership, and he gave the cup in Pharaoh's hand, and he hanged the baker, as Joseph had interpreted. Yet Joseph, the butler, forgot Joseph. Joseph he's now going to maturity, he's not yet there. Right? So he tells the butler, when my dream comes to pass, just put a word in for me. I mean, you are working for Pharaoh, just put a word in for me. It's very interesting that as you grow up and mature in your faith, you begin to realize that when God wants to do something through you, He can do it outside the human agency. I have set before thee an open door, says Paul, that no man can shut. So He's forgotten. And you may be sitting here this morning and you have helped somebody walk into their destiny, but you haven't yet walked into yours. You can get offended. That guy is in the palace because of me, and I'm still where I am. Because God's time had to come. In Genesis 41, verse 1, and it came to pass at the end of 2 years that Pharaoh had a dream. And then verse 9, the butler said to Pharaoh, I do remember my first this day. There was a guy who helped me fulfill my destiny. He's out there. I'll get him. God's timing. God's destiny and timing have to line up. Now when you and I think of time, we think of the clock, we think of a calendar. God works outside these two. Outside. You can fast. You can pray. You can call down heaven. You can bind all the demons. But He makes all things beautiful in His time. God works in a totally different way. And so don't look at your clock and don't look at your calendar and put a thing on God and say, I want this prayer answered. He says, in my time. And if you can trust God's time, then you can release that thing to God. Promotion comes not from the east or west, but from the Lord. Not here, in Sri Lanka, I have parents come to me and say, Pastor, can you pray for my, on a Sunday when the exams are on, year 12 exams are on, the pastor will call all the young people who have exams on this week, come forward, we want to pray for you. I asked the pastor, ask them the question, have they studied? God's not going to the exam. I know because prayer didn't help me. I didn't study. We didn't ask that question. Help yourself. That's for the guys on this side who don't like to study. Study. Do what you can. Do your best. Give it your best shot. Then you can trust God to show up. Forgotten. Joseph realizes that somebody's affirmation isn't the determining factor in his destiny. I wish you can grasp that truth. He refused to let disappointment define his life. And you can walk in freedom when you discover that truth. You are not defined. The destiny God has for you isn't defined by somebody's affirmation on your life. It is defined by a sovereign God who has put His stamp of approval on you before you were born. And you can walk in that freedom and knowledge. Can I have offering now? Keys to forgiveness. It's only the gospel that can give us the enabling to forgive. Only the gospel. That's what makes Christianity unique. That's what makes Christianity distinct and different from other philosophies and religions. Every religious philosophy has a lot of good merit in it. But it is only Jesus Christ who gives us the capacity to forgive the unforgivable. Joseph was called to turn a nation. But before he could turn a nation, he had to turn within himself. So the first turn to destiny is within us. Is the willingness to let the pain go. It's painful. He's weeping over and over again. And yet, Genesis 42 verse 24, and then he turned himself about from them and wept and returned again to them. Wow. Genesis 43 verse 30, and Joseph made haste, for his bowels yearned for his brother, and he sought where to weep, and he entered into the chamber, and he wept. Genesis 45 verse 1, then Joseph could not refrain himself before all of them that stood by him, and he cried, cause every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known to his brethren, and he wept aloud that the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it. Pain is real. Pain is real. But we have to confront the pain. We have to confront it. Number two, we have to work through the pain. Number three, he didn't downplay his disappointments, but he celebrates whom he had become only because of the grace of God upon his life. He celebrated. You know, people who have gone through pain can't celebrate. I can't. I find it very hard. I'm very honest. That's why I don't like to go for functions and social events. I just struggle emotionally. There was a time in my life where when I had a birthday party for me, so somebody in my family had a birthday party, the people would be in the house and I would circle around in my car 30 times until everybody has gone. And I'm honest. That's why nobody comes to my house. And I'm happy with that. Just the way I'm wired. When I grew up, I was just kept in a cot. When I got hungry, that was how I picked up in the evening, and I grew up alone. And that shaped my life to some extent. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know I'm dysfunctional, and I know you are. So, level playing field. I'm the happiest when I'm alone. I can sit with the book. I won't go down that road. And when I need some company, I ask some of the young people to come over. They cheer me up. But I have to choose to break through the cycle, and it's been a long, painful process. But yet, I chose to work through my disappointments. I began to realize that with God's grace, 1 centimeter at a time, not a mile at a time, not a yard at a time. My wife likes a yard, a meter. I'm moving centimeters emotionally. That I can change. So Joseph didn't downplay his disappointments, but he didn't allow disappointment to define him. When people are laughing and are happy, what are they laughing about? My son sent me a photograph of his 3 children at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they were all ready. So I said, what's wrong? He said, that's the Fernandes look. That's very encouraging. That's very encouraging. 20 years ago, if he did that, I would have kept him on the ear. I said, and immediately I said, but then your family is a happy family. And he said, oh yes. You know what he was saying, you know? But at least we have open dialogue now, which we didn't have before. Because I had to make a choice. I am not going to let pain define me, and I can't allow pain to define him. That's the difference. Because I want that destructive cycle broken in his life. So I had to confront my pain and confront my emotion. It's to do with the emotions. Joseph experienced pain because he was fractured from the brothers whom he looked up to. Whenever there is relational conflict, there's a fracture, and fractures take time to heal. So we have to be understanding. And the question you have to ask yourself is, where is my husband coming from? What happened in his life? That God help me understand better. In understanding him better, he will understand you better. Fathers are not bad fathers, they just don't know father biblically. They might know it here, but they don't know how to translate it down there. It took a lot of reading and a lot of understanding of myself before I understood the consequences of dysfunctional father. So Joseph celebrates whom he had become only because of God's grace upon his life, and he chooses to forgive. God healed Joseph's inner wounds, he can heal us too. So I want to tell you something. Forgiveness is not always easy. That first slide. At times it feels more painful than the wound we suffered. To forgive the one who inflicted it on us. You know, wounds are deep. Emotional wounds are very deep. But you and I can't afford the luxury of holding on. We have to let go. The pain is real. Don't let anyone tell you it's okay. Maybe you had a father who never came through for you in the way he should have. But God can turn that around. Because when I look at my life, God was superintending my life. I should have been dead at least 4 times. At least. And I can see the overall hand of God at the end of my life. Not when I was going through what I was going through. I had to struggle alone. No motivation to study. Life was a struggle, emotional. I became a Christian, but the emotional struggle continued. Because I didn't know what I know now, and I didn't learn what I know now, and didn't understand God's dealings better now. And I had to forgive people who were really close to me and who betrayed me and didn't come through for me. That wasn't easy. I could have exposed some of the things that they had told me, but I said, look, I just in that place where you're in control. So you might have helped somebody get to their position, and you forgotten, that's all right. God knows. What God has purpose for your life and mine, He will bring to pass in His time. But it depends on our willingness to let go and let God. That's not always easy. But it is possible by the grace of God. Justice. You ask yourself, where is justice in all this? Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. I will repay. Leave that aspect of your life in God's hands. You walk in wholeness. The more whole you are emotionally, the more wholeness you can bring to those around you. And I often look at people who are emotionally whole and think, wow, I wish I could be like that. They got it all wired together. And God says, I try to be like somebody else. I made you in your composite totality. I accepted you. David is called beloved of God. He is the most dysfunctional guy on the planet at his time. And yet, God says, I found me a man after my heart. Intentional. He chose one imperfect guy to work his destiny for the nation of Israel. Today we have the nation of Israel because David had established it. So this teaches me that there is hope in the midst of hopelessness. That whatever you are going through, God can turn it around. But the first turn must begin inside you. And say, God, I'm just going to let you be God. Shall we pray? Every head bowed, every eye closed, just for a few moments. You want me to pray with you for you, just put your hand up and put it down. You're going through some hurt, some pain, something